be talking about our, I always mess up the intro. Because I never know what I'm going to say. Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about a really, really good winter tactic. Right now, pond's frozen, but today it got up to 53 degrees, and today is January 14th, so that's very surprising. The pond's pretty much unfrozen now. It's got very, very little thin layer ice. And today we're going to be talking about jigs. Jigs are really one of the key things to catch them this time of year. There's a couple other things you can catch them on, like grubs, big swim baits. People either throw little grubs or just big, like 6 and 8 inch swim baits. I don't understand how that is such a difference, but I guess it's either you go throw something real big, you throw something small. But the in-between that you can throw is jigs. See, I've got this one, which I just got on my mystery tackle box. That's like a free swinging jig. It's pretty much a jig. It's got a skirt on it. It's not just like a wobble head. Just, there's a variety of jigs. You got the archy heads, you got footballs. But we're just going to go over all the types of jigs, and we're going to talk about the different situations to throw them in, because you can throw them any kind of jig this time of year, because jigs always work like I was talking about. They're one of the best baits to throw this time of year, in my opinion. Some people, they're going to say those swim baits or those grubs. But I think the jig is the best thing because you can just throw it out there. You can work it multiple different ways. You got swim jigs right there, and you also got just football heads and like those archy heads. You can just work them on the bottom. Football head, you can drag them. Archy heads, you can bounce them. There's a lot of ways that whatever the fish wants, you can do it with a jig because they've got so many different types of jigs, and jigs are so versatile. So when I would say I would not fish a swim jig this time of year, I'll tell you that, because those fish are not going to be suspended and moving and looking for those bait fish. That's in the fall. Fall's the best time, spring, sometimes in the summer. I've had really good luck in the summer with swim jigs. Me and my dad, we went out one night, and he caught a pretty big one, and then we got a bunch of 2.5 pounders to 1.5 pounders that night. So the fish were really on the swim jigs, and that was the middle of the summer. That was June, July, and August when they were eating all those swim jigs. But when I throw the archy head this time of year is if you've got not too deep. So let's say you're in 8 to 10 feet of water, and the football head, I'd fish it from 10 to deeper, not 8 to 10. So you're in 8 to 10 feet, and that's where the fish, that's probably the highest that the fish are going to be this time of year, because the water's real cold. It's not like it was in the fall where it was 54 was your low and you got up to 75, maybe even 80, and those fish, that's the time of year to fish. You will always want to fish in the fall, throw jigs and moving baits. So I'd throw this in about 8 to 10 feet of water, and I'd throw it to brush, because these jigs are made really good for brush. I actually just in my tackle warehouse order got a brush jig, because we flip a lot of laydowns with jigs, and these I'd fish in deeper brush, skip them under docks during the summer, but we're talking about winter. I have no idea where I'm going with this, but just throw them to deeper cover. That's where you throw these archy heads, and I just got this brush jig. This is another good one for those deeper brush piles. It's got a nice stiff weed guard, so you're not getting snagged up. Because if you've ever flipped a jig into a lot of laydowns or brush piles, you get snagged up pretty easily, because it's just how a jig is. When you flip in to a laydown, let's say, you flip in and the jig drops in just like this. That weed guard, all it needs is pressure to go in. So you hit it on a limb, hooks right in, and you're snagged. That happens a lot, so you may want to get these brush jigs, but if you just get a good jig with just a good weed guard on it, it's not too solid. I think this one's a little too solid, but it'll work for heavier cover. This time of year, those fish aren't going to want to bite it as much, so I would not throw a brush jig this time of year. They're going to be more finicky about it. And then I've only got one finesse jig, and it's a Bitsy Bite. It's a Strike King Bitsy Bite jig that I just cut the skirt down on to make it a finesse jig. And finesse jigs are really good this time of year. A lot of people fish them. You throw like a little, nothing flapping, just like little craw trailer with just claws on it that don't move. And you fish that. And when you fish that, that's what those real finicky bass, that's going to be for your coldest days when you're going to be fishing that finesse jig. This you can fish any depth. Shallow, but you're not going to be fishing it shallow. It's winter. I guess you could fish it shallow, but I've had one of my friends fish this in the dead middle of the summer, and that's what he caught all his fish on. You can fish that as deep as you want. You just got to get a heavier size. Next, we're going on to this jig right here. It's from Freedom Tackle. I call it a jig, but you Texas rig a bait on it, and it's got a free swinging head. It's pretty much like the finesse jig, except for it's not for finesse purposes. This is for getting it down there deep and fishing deep or shallow. But you're not going to be fishing shallow. I keep on saying shallow. I have no idea why. But you'll just fish it down deep most of the time this time of year. Maybe mid-depth like these arky heads. That's when you throw those arky heads there. Next up, we'll go into football heads. Football head jigs are really, really good for this time of year because a football head, you can fish it in from 10 down, like I was talking about, from 10 foot down to as deep as you want, really, because these football heads are made to fish deep, and they're made for rocks. They've got those big heads on them so then they don't get stuck when you're dragging it along. They don't get stuck in those, well, I said about that small. They don't get stuck in those holes of the rocks. And I don't know if you can tell, but they make some of them to stand up. See how that hook's standing up? This one, I don't know if it's, I forget. This one sits at just a slight angle. Some of them sit completely flat, where the bait's just sitting just like that. Your trailer's sticking straight out. Some of them stick straight up. Some of them stick at an angle, like this one. Those, like I said, fish deep. Then you've the booyah jigs. These ones, I prefer where I throw the arky heads. Then you've got these ones here, which are, these are the Strike King Big Teeth Bite jigs. These ones are just like a finesse jig, except for they don't have that smaller finicky skirt. They've got the big full skirt, like that, and like this. And you throw those when the fish aren't super finicky, but they are. Like, it's not enough to where you're throwing that little jig with those little finesse skirt on it and everything, but it's enough to where those fish still aren't going to bite that big old football head jig like that. That's a pretty big jig in my opinion. Look how thick that skirt is and how long it is. Or that just, where is it? Can't even find it. Or that arky head jig, because that arky head, it's still, like, look at the weed guard on it. It's got that big long skirt. It's pretty full. And you don't want that. So that's your in-between. And then you got all your swim jigs. Like I said, you do not fish. I wouldn't fish it unless you want to throw like a big swim bait on the back. If you're one of those guys that throws the big swim baits, you can throw a big swim bait on the back of a pretty long hooked. Look at all these jigs. And I feel like I need more. I've got so many jigs. I really like jigs. Every time of the year I fish jigs. The summer, for me, the jigs start to slow down. I don't fish jigs as much. I have no idea why, but the fish just don't. Look at all those. The fish just don't like them as much, in my opinion. They like more of a soft plastic craw. All right, so there's talking about the jigs. Now we're going to talk about what you need to jig fish. What I like to fish with jigs is braid. Most people don't use mono because they say that it's got too much stretch. You don't get as much feel as fluorocarbon. In my opinion, fluorocarbon's way too expensive. So I use braid, mono, and if I ever, I've gotten a few spools of fluorocarbon, so I've used fluorocarbon for it. But what I like, this is a 6-4-1 reel. In my opinion, it could be a little bit faster. I would go to like a 6-6-1, 6-7-1. But you can go from 5, in my opinion, is probably the lowest you could go because when you're fishing those jigs, if you're fishing them deep, you got to pick up that line and jig it again, because when you got that thing so deep down there, you're fishing that football head, let's say like 15 to 20 feet deep. You're jigging it. You get a bite. You have to pick up all that slack as fast as you can to get that hook set, because there's a big delay on that hook set also, because you're setting the hook all the way. The hook is all the way out there in 20 feet of water, you got to pick up that slack, then set the hook, and that's going to take a while to get down there to the bait and hook the fish. So you need a pretty fast reel. It doesn't really matter your rod length, I'd say. Probably go from a 6.6. I fish a lot of shorter rods. I'd go from a 6.6, no longer than probably 7.3. I don't like long rods. A lot of my friends fish really long rods. I don't think there's a point. I like the 7-foot rods, but 6.6 just fits me perfect. So that's really it. Go from like a medium heavy all the way up to an extra heavy if you wanted to. In my opinion, you don't need to go any more than a medium heavy. Go to heavy. In my opinion, a heavy works, but I don't like to go much more. So thanks for watching the video, guys. Be sure to like, subscribe, and see you.